It was a Wednesday, the kind that folds into itself, gray light, coffee half warm, the dog asleep in the corner of the living room. Routine held everything in place like stitches in old fabric. I came home early from work, not for any special reason, just a canceled meeting and the sudden luxury of time. The house was quiet, humming the same background notes as always, the fridge, the ticking clock over the mantel, the faint creak of the ceiling from settling beams. She wasn't home. I didn't expect her to be. But there was something different today. Not loud, not wrong, just different. I noticed it when I put my keys in the ceramic bowl on the hallway table. There was a book beside it, something leather-bound with a faded lilac ribbon peeking out like a tongue. It wasn't mine, and it wasn't hers, either. I knew every book she owned, alphabetized on the shelves by the window, organized like some neurotic librarian had kissed her brain. This one had weight, age. No title on the cover. I picked it up. It was warm. Still warm. That was the first crack. It shouldn't have been warm. Not from the sun. There hadn't been any. Not from a heater. It wasn't near one. It was as if someone had just been holding it, reading it, breathing near it. I flipped it open, more out of curiosity than suspicion. The pages were filled with her handwriting. Precise. Slanted. Personal. But they weren't grocery lists or fitness goals or the endless mental vomit of self-help regurgitation she sometimes scrawled across Post-its. These were entries. Real ones. Dated. Paragraphs long. Thoughts she never shared. She never told me she kept a journal. I stood still, reading the first few lines. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't dramatic. It was worse. Subtle. Detached. Words like, he still doesn't notice anything, and sometimes I wonder if I even need to fake it anymore. My name didn't appear, but it didn't have to. I was in every line, erased. She described someone with the vague brushstrokes of a stranger, but it was me. It had to be me. He eats the same sandwich every Friday. Still says he likes it. And then a smirk in ink. He never did. I read maybe 3 pages before I stopped. Not because I couldn't go on, but because I recognized something worse than betrayal. This wasn't an emotional affair. This wasn't passion or desperation. This was contempt disguised as cleverness. She was proud. She wasn't sorry. And yet, what made my stomach tighten wasn't the journal itself. It was where I found it. She never left things out. Not her books. Not her phone. Not her gym bag. And this wasn't careless. It was too precise. Too placed. That was the second crack. I put it back exactly where it had been. Closed. Ribbon returned to its resting place. I didn't want her to know I'd seen it. Not yet. Not until I understood the game she was playing. And it was a game, there was no doubt now. She was someone else behind her eyes, behind her smiles, behind her hand on mine at dinner. I saw it all at once, like stepping into a cold room that used to be warm, realizing the warmth had never been for you. Later that evening, she came home with takeout. Thai. Smiling. Casual. The same routine played out, her laugh at my tired joke, her hand brushing mine when she passed the drinks. But now it felt like watching an actor who didn't know the camera had caught her out of character. I watched her. Every motion. Every lie wrapped in normalcy. She didn't know the book had spoken. She thought I was still asleep. That's how much she believed she was smarter than me. And maybe, for a while, she was. But not anymore. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not because of rage. Not even heartbreak. Just clarity. A kind of silence in the brain when something finally fits. I remembered her saying she needed space a few nights a week, to write, to reconnect with herself. I remembered how she started locking her office door. How she began showering in the guest bathroom. The details weren't loud. They weren't dramatic. But they lined up now, perfectly, like bones under skin. I didn't confront her. I didn't rage. I just watched her brush her teeth in the mirror, humming some tune I couldn't place, like everything was fine. And that's when I knew. She didn't just cheat. She enjoyed hiding it. That was the rot beneath the surface. Not lust. Not boredom. Control. The secret was the thrill. She was living 2 lives. And I had just seen the border. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that I just stepped over it. And I wasn't coming back. We still had dinner every night. That was the lie. Plates clinked, wine poured, candles flickered because she said it helped her unwind, like she was playing at domestic theater. She asked about my day with just enough warmth to pass as interested, but her eyes never left the rim of her glass. I answered anyway, gave her little stories, moments from work, tried to inject color into the conversation. But she always seemed to be waiting for it to end, like she had a better scene waiting in the wings. She smiled. She nodded. She laughed in the right places. But none of it ever touched her face. It was all teeth and timing. She started using words like space and growth during small talks that didn't ask for them. She wasn't angry. That would have been something. She was polite, detached. Politeness is the last defense of a dying love. Once rage and passion burn out, the mask of courtesy is all that remains. It's important to grow as individuals, she said once, over eggs and black coffee. She looked at me like she was teaching a lesson, like I was the slow one in class. I just nodded and chewed. She wasn't cruel. Cruelty needs effort. Things began disappearing. Small, quiet absences. She stopped wearing the necklace I got her on our 5th anniversary, the one she said she never took off. It hung on the bedroom mirror now, still looped, still shining. Just not on her. When I asked, she said it didn't match her new energy. I didn't press. I didn't ask what that meant. I didn't want to know. Or maybe I did, but not from her. Not while she smiled like that. Her phone changed. Not the model. The way it lived. It used to sit face up on the kitchen counter while she cooked or scrolled through recipes or read out loud from the news. Now it was always face down. Or in her pocket. Or in her hand. She never left it alone. Not even when she showered. Once, I heard it buzz on the bathroom floor and instinctively reached to glance. Just to see if it was her sister, maybe her mom. Nothing nefarious. Just a reflex. But the screen was black, locked, with a new passcode. That was new. I didn't ask about that, either. I started watching the way she moved. The little tells. She used to hum when she made coffee. A lazy melody, off-key but constant. It stopped. Now she scrolled. Always scrolling. Her eyes were never on the moment. They were chasing something elsewhere. A notification. A voice. A name. Something not in this room. Not in this house. Not with me. One night, I caught her standing in the dark hallway, phone to her chest, just standing there. Not moving. Not talking. Just breathing, slow and even. I almost called her name, but something stopped me. Something about how still she was. Like she was listening. Like she wasn't alone. When she finally moved, she walked past me like a shadow. Not startled, not guilty. Just distant. I didn't ask. I didn't say a word. I started to test reality. Left small traps. Moved things subtly. Tilted the angle of her yoga mat in the corner. Shifted the charger cord she always used. Turned the bathroom trash just slightly. Every time I came back, things had changed. Not reset. Not fixed. Just changed. Like someone else had been there and left in a hurry. Then came the false crescendo. It was 11:17 p.m. on a Thursday. I remember because I looked at the clock 3 times. I heard a voice. A man's voice. Brief. Deep. From the hallway. Not a phone call. Too clear. Too close. I got up slowly. She wasn't in bed. The lights were off, but there was a faint blue glow from under the office door. My stomach tightened. Not fear. Not even anger. Just confirmation. I crept closer. No more voices. Just silence. Then the soft click of the lock sliding into place. She had locked the door. Our home. Her door. Against me. I stood there for maybe a minute. Listening. Nothing. Not even the sound of typing. Just breathing. I could have knocked. I could have forced it. But I didn't want confrontation. I didn't want denial. I wanted the whole picture. I wanted to watch her drown in the story she thought she controlled. So I walked away. Quietly. Slowly. Back to bed. Back to stillness. The next morning, she kissed me on the cheek like nothing happened. Like she hadn't been behind that locked door all night. She made toast. Wore a robe that used to belong to both of us. Told me she was proud of the work I'd been doing. Asked if I wanted to try a new brunch place that weekend. Her smile was soft. Her tone perfect. But I was already gone. Only my body stayed. She thought the illusion held. That the surface was smooth. But the current underneath had already turned. I didn't believe in her love anymore. I didn't believe in her laughter. I didn't believe in her. I just watched her now. Watched the way liars keep their balance on a wire made of secrets. And I waited. It was a Sunday, late morning, the kind of slow time where everything feels heavier, quieter, and more honest. She was at her studio, her sanctuary of self-expression, some rented loft space she used twice a week now to journal and meditate. I never questioned it aloud. I let her have that illusion. But that morning, as I folded laundry, something betrayed her in a way no slip of the tongue or glance ever could. A receipt. Crumpled, smudged with faint fingerprints, tucked deep into the back pocket of the jeans she wore the day before. I didn't mean to find it. I was smoothing the fabric, mind already elsewhere. But when I felt the crinkle and reached inside, my fingers closed on something sharp and unspoken. It was from a boutique hotel in the city, the kind with cold white hallways, designer furniture, and rooms meant for secrets. One room, one night, a bottle of chilled wine, 2 entrees, 1 charge to her card. But that wasn't the part that changed everything. What it was the final line on the bill, one I might have missed if I wasn't staring so hard I could feel the blood moving behind my eyes. Special request, vegan option, please. He's allergic to dairy. I stopped breathing. Because I wasn't allergic to dairy. Never had been. But someone else was. Someone she'd mentioned once, casually, almost dismissively, in a story about a colleague at her old job. A man who had brought vegan cupcakes to a staff party because he couldn't eat the store-bought ones. At the time, she called him insufferable. Overly sensitive. But apparently not so insufferable in private. I stood there with the receipt in my hand, laundry forgotten, the fabric of our life literally crumpled in my grip. No panic. No rage. Just a deep, shattering silence. The kind that doesn't echo, it absorbs. She didn't make a mistake. She made accommodations. Personal ones. Kind ones. Thoughtful ones. The type of kindness she used to reserve for me. Now given to someone who had a dietary restriction and a room key. That line, 7 words, ripped every last veil off the farce I'd been living. She'd cooked for him. She'd cared for him. She planned that night. That wasn't a moment of passion. That was structure. Intention. I looked around the room. Our room. Our life. Our framed memories. They stared back like props. Dead weight on the walls. And in that moment, I stopped being her husband. I became something else. I wasn't hurt anymore. Hurt needs hope. I had none. What I had now was time. And clarity. And patience. She had built a stage, and I was going to burn it plank by plank. Not with fire, but with silence and strategy. She thought she was the only one capable of deception. That was her first mistake. I went into her office while she was still out, using the emergency key she didn't know I had copied. Sat at her desk. Pulled up her browser history, her cloud drive. Passwords were obvious. Too obvious. Emotional cheaters get lazy when they think you're dumb. Found photos. Schedules. Snippets of conversations she'd carelessly backed up. Found his name. His real name. Not the one she used to mention in passing. Not the nickname. The real one. Found notes about future weekends and next steps and one particularly interesting line. He's starting to suspect but hasn't said a word. Might be easier to push him out emotionally than admit the truth. I reread that one several times. Not out of shock. Out of admiration. She wanted me to leave her. She wanted the guilt to be mine. She was playing the long game. But now the board was flipped. I put everything back exactly as I found it. Relocked the office. Sat on the couch with the game on mute and my laptop open. I started taking notes. Quietly. Precisely. Not because I was unsure. But because this wasn't going to be a confrontation. This was going to be an execution. She didn't need to know I knew. Not yet. I wanted her to keep playing her part. Smiling at dinner. Texting him under the table. I wanted him to believe he was winning. That he was chosen. That she was sincere. And then, when it mattered most, when he thought she belonged to him, I would make sure he saw the truth. That she wasn't loyal to anyone. Not me. Not him. Just the thrill. And when he left her, cold and wordless, I'd be standing there, not as the victim, not as the fool, but as the man who let the house collapse while holding the blueprints to every lie inside it. It happened on a Saturday. Sunlight pouring in through the kitchen window, coffee brewing, her humming some off-key melody while pretending she still belonged to the life she'd abandoned months ago. I hadn't said a word all morning. Not one. Just sat there at the table, stirring my coffee slowly, watching her perform. She was in leggings and a sweatshirt she used to wear on our trips upstate. I wondered if she wore it for him too. Probably. The hum stopped when she caught my eyes. Something in my silence unsettled her. "You okay?" she asked, with that head tilt she thought made her look soft. I didn't answer. I just pushed the folded receipt across the table. No words. No expression. Just the quiet sound of paper sliding into judgment. She looked at it. Didn't flinch. Didn't gasp. Just blinked. Twice. Picked it up like it was a bill she forgot to pay. "What is this?" she asked, flatly. Not confusion performance. She already knew. That was her first mistake. "Vegan," I said, voice low. "He's allergic to dairy." You made sure the kitchen knew. That was thoughtful. Her lips parted slightly. Not guilt, calculation. Watching my face for softness. Weakness. There was none. That's not what you think, she said, too quickly. It was for a client. A meeting. You booked a hotel room for a client? She scoffed. Scoffed. Don't twist it. You're reading into things that aren't there. And yet, I said, reaching into the folder beside me, he is there, isn't he? I slid the printouts across the table, screenshots, cloud saves, her own journal notes she backed up without thinking. Her words. Not mine. She looked down. The smile cracked. Just for a second. Then came the next mask, indignation. You went through my private files? I went through the wreckage, I replied, calm as steel. Just needed to find where the fire started. She stood now, arms crossed. Defensive. You don't get to do this. You don't get to act betrayed when you've been emotionally checked out for years. I tried. I tried to fix this. You tried to fix it by faking orgasms, journaling about how pathetic I was, and booking hotel rooms for a man who doesn't even like cheese? Her face flushed. I was lonely. You never noticed me anymore. You just existed. No, I said, standing now, slow, controlled. I noticed everything. I noticed when you stopped kissing me goodnight. I noticed when your phone stopped breathing next to mine. I noticed when you stopped wearing the necklace I gave you and started dressing like someone who had somewhere better to be. I noticed you, even when you didn't want to be seen. She shook her head, backing away, voice rising. You always make it about you. You want to act like the victim, but you weren't exactly a prize. You think being quiet and moody is attractive? You think that made me feel wanted. You didn't want a man, I said, each word sharpened. You wanted a mirror. Someone to reflect whatever version of yourself you thought deserved worship that week. And when I stopped feeding your fantasy, you found someone gullible enough to pretend you were still that girl. But even that wasn't enough. You had to write about it. Record it. Like some twisted trophy case of betrayal. She sat down now. Slowly. Breathing shallow. Her eyes flickered, not with regret, but exposure. She was cornered and knew it. He understood me, she whispered, like that made it better. He saw me. No, I said, walking toward her, standing over the kitchen island, eyes locked on hers. He saw the version you sold him. The curated masterpiece of a neglected wife, aching for meaning. He doesn't know the real you. The one who lies through smiles. Who weaponizes silence. Who manipulates grief into attention. But he will. Her face dropped. You wouldn't. I don't have to, I said. I just have to wait. Because you're not loyal to him either. You're loyal to the story. And stories fall apart when the plot holes get too big to ignore. Eventually, he'll realize he's not special. He's just next. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Her hands trembled slightly. She looked smaller now. Diminished. The queen with no court. What do you want from me? She asked, voice cracking. Punishment? Do you want me to beg? Cry? Is that what this is about? No, I said, leaning down, voice cold enough to frost glass. I just wanted to see the moment the mask finally broke. And it did. Her shoulders sagged. Her eyes filled but didn't spill. Her mouth quivered, struggling to hold the last expression she hadn't rehearsed. Vulnerability. Not the kind that inspires forgiveness, the kind that confirms everything. She wasn't sorry for what she did, only for being caught. I didn't leave. I just stood there, watching. The silence that followed could have swallowed a room full of people, but it only needed the two of us. She sat at the kitchen island, still trembling, trying to piece together the mask she once wore like a second skin. Her hand shook against the granite, and for the first time in years, I saw her unsure of her own words. The queen had fallen, and now all that was left was a woman with nowhere to run. She tried to fill the air with words, any words, like maybe enough noise could drown the truth. You're overreacting, she said, voice hoarse but rising. This isn't what you think, what you want to think. You're blowing one moment out of proportion. You think one night means everything we had was a lie? I didn't move. I didn't blink. I just watched her. She shifted in her seat, desperate now. You're not perfect either. Don't act like some saint. You shut me out for years. You think I didn't feel that? You think I didn't notice how cold you got? How distant? Still I said nothing. That only made it worse. God, say something, she hissed. Say something instead of just sitting there like you're better than me. I looked at her then, and my voice came out like frost, slow and even. I'm not better than you. I'm just not hollow. That hit harder than any scream. She blinked fast. Swallowed. Her voice cracked as she pushed on, like someone fumbling for a light switch in a burning house. You think anyone else is going to love you like I did? You think the next woman's going to understand you the way I did? I built a life around you. I gave you everything, my time, my body, my youth, and you're throwing it away because of what? A hotel receipt. I leaned forward, just enough for my words to cut deeper. You didn't give me your youth. You gave me your performance. And I paid for it in years. She froze. The color drained from her face. I kept going. You didn't build a life with me. You built a stage. You wanted an audience, not a partner. And when I stopped clapping, you found someone else who still believed the show was real. She covered her face with both hands now, like that would hide the shame, the guilt, the realization that everything she thought she controlled was slipping through her fingers like sand. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. I didn't think you'd take it this far. No, I replied, standing fully now, my tone steady, merciless. You didn't think I'd see you. That's the difference. You spent so long behind a mask, you forgot what your real face looked like. And now that it's out in the open, you can't stand it. She started crying then. Real tears. No makeup. No angles. Just the raw sobs of someone who knew the game was over. The same woman who once held every room with ease now sat collapsing in her own kitchen, while the weight of consequence pressed into her chest. Please, she begged, voice breaking, can we just talk about this? Just us. Just you and me. We can fix it. I'll go to therapy. I'll cut him off. I'll do anything. Just don't throw this away. I shook my head, slowly. You don't understand. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm just done pretending it was ever real. She reached out, fingers grazing the air between us like she could pull me back with a gesture. Please, don't go. I'm not going anywhere, I said. That's the part you still don't get. I'm staying right here, and I'm going to live a better life without you while you sit in the ruins of what you tried to keep both ways. Her mouth opened, but no words came. Just air. Just panic. The neighbors weren't watching openly, but I saw the curtain shift across the window. Someone had heard the crescendo, now listening for the fallout. I didn't care. Let them hear. Let them all hear. I walked past her, not storming, not slamming, just moving forward. Her sobs followed me, pleading with someone who no longer existed. And as I reached the hallway, I stopped, turned just once. She looked up, eyes red, cheeks wet, completely unguarded. You always needed to be seen, I said, voice flat. Now you finally are. Then I said nothing more. Because there was nothing left. The silence that followed was final. And she knew it. It's been 9 months. People ask me if I ever hear from her, and I tell them the truth, more often than you'd think. At first it was subtle. A liked photo on social media, a just thinking of you email that didn't mention what she'd done. But as the walls closed in around her, the tone changed. Friends stopped answering. Her name started getting whispered in the same breath as homewrecker and liar and sad. She tried to pivot at work, but the industry she once played like a violin turned cold. Apparently, some of those journal entries ended up in the wrong inbox, and suddenly her little affair wasn't just personal scandal. It was evidence of manipulation, gaslighting, and professional misconduct. Her lover? Gone. I didn't have to do anything. He disappeared the moment I sent him a package with 2 things, a printed journal entry where she compared his body to mine, unfavorably, and a video of her bragging to a friend about how he'd believe anything as long as you touch his ego. He never replied. Just vanished. She tried chasing him, but when a man realizes he was just a pawn, he doesn't come back. He erases the game entirely. Her family, once so proudly on her side, went quiet too. I never said a word to them. I didn't have to. She did that herself. Tried to spin the breakup as a mutual growth decision, but then people started asking why she wasn't allowed to see me. Why her closest friends had blocked her. Why even her sister wouldn't take her calls. People don't need evidence to believe betrayal. They just need enough silence to fill with suspicion. And she gave them that silence in spades. Now she lives alone. Small apartment, smaller circle, if any. The woman who used to control every room now barely speaks above a whisper in public. She used to laugh at people who cried in cafes. Now she is one. I've seen her once or twice. Not on purpose. Just passing by. She looked thinner. Not physically, spiritually. Like someone had scooped the core out of her and left the shell to keep moving. She tried once to stop me, in a parking lot, of all places. Said my name like it still belonged to her. Her voice cracked. Said she missed me. That she still loved me. That we were soulmates. I looked her in the eyes, those same eyes that used to manipulate, seduce, and twist the truth like it was sport, and I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I felt nothing. I said, You're not someone I know anymore." She cried harder then, begging me just to talk. Just a coffee. Just a walk. "Please," she said, voice shaking. "Please just give me something." I told her I already did. Years of my life. Every ounce of trust. Every vulnerable piece of myself I thought she'd protect. "You spent all of that," I said, "on lies and applause. Now there's nothing left." She tried to say something else, but the words broke inside her throat. I walked away. Not fast. Not cruel. Just done. And that was the final nail, not that I hated her, but that I didn't care. She became a stranger with my history. Someone I once shared a life with. Someone I now wouldn't recognize in a crowd. People think revenge is loud, some big explosion. But sometimes, it's just living so well, so freely, that the person who broke you sees the life they could have had and knows they'll never be welcome in it again. So that's it. That's how her story ended. Not with fire. With quiet. She lost everything she thought she controlled, and in the end, the only person who still sees her clearly is the one who no longer looks back. Thanks for listening. Let me know where you're watching from and what you would have done if it were your wife.